If you've played guitar long enough, then pain is something you've probably experienced quite a few times. Maybe it's your wrists, maybe it's your forearms, maybe it's your shoulders, or just any kind of pain after you've had a long practice session. And a lot of guitar players think that that's just the deal of playing guitar. No pain, no gain, right? Thinking, oh, if I don't hurt my hands, then I'm not trying hard enough, so I've got to try harder. And that mindset is one of the biggest reasons why a lot of guitar players get seriously injured. And it gets to the point where they cause irreversible damage that stops them playing in the future, or at least limits their abilities to what they could possibly achieve. So in this video I want to talk about how we can reduce pain and injury in our own playing. And that's doing it without sacrificing how long you're playing for or how fast you want to play. And I want to keep it as interesting and precise as I can to keep you shredders happy and healthy. Everything that I'm talking about today I've had to learn through experience myself. Situations where I messed up really badly, but I managed to fix it before it became a big problem. And just to be clear, I'm not a doctor, but I'm a guitarist that spends every waking moment playing the instrument, and it's something that I want to do for decades and decades and decades more. Because, as it will be the same with many of you, music is my everything. But anyways, let's get straight into it. Okay, let's start with the most important thing. Pain does not equal gain. Putting in effort is completely normal. Getting fatigue when you're playing for a while is completely normal. But pain is not. Pain is a sign that your body's saying, please stop doing this because it's not working. And ignoring that signal doesn't make you tougher. It just starts and accumulates into really bad damage that can affect your guitar playing seriously. And a lot of injuries that come from guitar aren't from some massive stage dive where you land on your head and break your arm or whatever. But it comes from the small repetitive motions that we do that are mistakes, that build up over the long term, into things like arthritis and a lot of those issues. Having things like bad posture and training past failure can all accumulate into really bad damage, but the most important one that I will mention today will be tension. So let's break this down from the ground up. The first thing that we need to talk about is posture. Actual functional posture. You don't need to sit like some classical snob with your back straight, but your body should feel balanced. If your shoulders are all hunched and your neck's all crooked and your back's all curved over, that tension that's created goes straight down your arms and straight into your hands. Which, if you could tell, is not a good thing. A good rule of thumb is, if you're sat down and you've got your guitar in your hands, if you remove the guitar, would you be able to maintain that posture comfortably? If you can't, then you're depending too heavily on your guitar. Your body should still feel comfortable when the guitar is not there. If you feel like you're going to collapse when the guitar gets taken away, you're doing way too much work than you have to. And your poor guitar is getting smothered. Okay, so what should you do? You should have your shoulders nice and relaxed. And you shouldn't just have them locked back and all firm. You should just hang them as if you were just sitting normally and relaxing. So say you sat down and you're feeling tense, your traps are going to feel firm. Whereas if you're relaxing, they're going to feel a bit squishy. And your neck should feel long like a giraffe. It shouldn't feel tense and tight. Like if you imagine your mother-in-law walking to the room and your neck goes grrr. Imagine that. That's what you shouldn't do. And another big thing about posture is that it comes a lot when people have their guitars hanging way too low. You may think it looks cool, but it forces really bad posture. Because it puts your fretting wrist into incredibly tight angles. Which is not fun. And that directly links to wrist pain and tendon issues. Probably why punk rockers are always so angry and why emo players are always so sad. But anyways, I digress. You don't need to have your guitar up at your chin like a new experimental post-industrial whatever band and have it all up there like the jazz masters. But having it slightly raised from what you're used to can have a really big difference. In my case, I have it a little bit higher than other people just because it feels so much easier on my wrists. But also, it makes me play faster and cleaner, which is a massive plus as well. But if I have it too high, I feel like I'm one step away from having a bowl cut and joining the Beatles. Okay, let's talk about the tension in the fretting hand. This is probably the biggest concern for most players, especially lead guitarists. Most people who play have got that tension and so they press way harder than they need to. Okay, so I want you to try something for me. Press your note as you normally would, and play that note repeatedly and slowly lift off your finger. At some point, obviously you'll realise the note has become dead and you can't hear it. And then at that point, press slightly more and more until you hear the note ringing out. You'll probably realise that's way less tension that you thought you needed to actually hear the notes ring out. If you're squeezing the neck like it owes you money, then your forearm's doing so much extra work that it doesn't need to be doing. And all of that extra work, as you can tell, will build up massive amounts of tension, and tension is not what we want. Like, take for example, when we play something really fast and we're pushing ourselves, we feel that tension really, really build up, and it makes it harder to play. And just remember, your thumb is a massive part of this. Your thumb doesn't need to be nailed into the back of the neck and stay there permanently, but it also doesn't need to be a vice grip against the neck. If your thumb starts changing colour while you're playing, that's probably a little bit too much tension. Your thumb should just be a guide for your fretting fingers to feel more stable. Another huge factor is wrist angle. Extreme wrist angles under tension are incredibly damaging. And that doesn't mean you can never ever bend your wrist. It just means you shouldn't live in that position. Remember what parents used to say, if the wind changes direction, you're going to be stuck like that for the rest of your life. If your wrist is sharply bent while you're playing a lot, that's going to cause some serious issues. And changing your guitar height might be something that works. Or even something simple like changing the angle of your neck. Obviously being higher up, you're going to have less of an angle, but you're going to feel more fatigue having to have your arm up that high. Anyways, we talked about the fretting hand, let's talk about the picking hand. From what I've seen through most of the guitarists that I see playing, they're always picking with their entire arm, and you can tell there's a lot of tension building up in there. And that's because a lot of people focus on the fretting hand because it's doing so much more work by actually, fretting the notes. And so that hand is usually what shows the symptoms of damage first. But remember, you have two hands. Well, I assume you have two hands. And having serious tension in your hand can also cause much more serious issues. Just remember, your entire body's a system. If you're going to feel tension in one area, it's probably going to be in the other place too. Which is why tension in the shoulders and the neck translates to issues further down the line. And just remember, if your hand's really tense, you're going to have a lot of inaccuracies with your picking. Stuff like rhythm and having clean notes. It's going to be a lot more difficult if you're really clenching hard. And fast playing, if you look at all the best fast players, they look really effortless when they're doing it. Because tension is not what builds speed. It's the effortlessness that brings the speed. Effortlessness. So if you feel like you're fighting the strings to play what you want to play, then there's something probably going massively wrong. If you're using too much force and the pick's going really deep within the strings, again, I think something is probably going wrong. And practicing shallow picking can probably help massively. And through economy of motion, you should be moving as little as you possibly can, and that means having just the tip going inside the strings. And if you ever feel burning in your hands or your forearms or something like that, then you should probably give it a break. Because that fatigue is turning into strain, something that we don't want. And again, I see a lot of people picking with their entire forearm. That's a weird movement. I'm not going to do that again. I see them picking with their entire forearm. And think about it. You want to move as little as possible so you can get as fast as you can, as clean as you can, and all these things. Why move your entire forearm when all you need to move is your wrist? Just by pivoting from the elbow from the wrist, you can get so much more cleaner, so much easier tight rhythm. As well as the thing that most of us want, speed. You can unlock tons and tons and tons of speed by just changing how you pick. Take someone like Burnt, for example. He's an amazing guitarist. And when you see him play, his fingers are barely moving to the point where you think, is this real? Because it's just that incredibly good. And don't worry, he's not Ichikanito, he is actually doing it. But just remember, all of these issues, the longer it takes to do, the more it builds up and the more work you have to do to actually fix these issues, because it gets ingrained in your brain. Just like I talked about in muscle memory, up there. No, up there. I always make that mistake. Anyways, so, what can we do to help ease this tension even more? And that's where we come onto warm-ups. Now, I'm not saying do a warm-up for 30 minutes before you start playing, because that is incredibly excessive and not necessary at all. But you do need something in place there, because cold muscles can break a lot more easy. A lot more easy? A lot more easier. A good warm-up increases blood flow to the muscles, wakes up your coordination, and checks for tension. Simple things like playing slow scales in legato or economy or ultimate or whatever you play, and very light picking, works really well. Just nothing too fast or too aggressive, which might be a challenge for some of you metal players. But if something feels tight during the warm-up, that's a sign that you should probably slow it down or do a little bit more warm-up before you can play. Because pushing through that tension is where injuries massively come into play. And speaking of practice, another thing that a lot of people don't mention is your practice volume itself. And that's not just talking about how long you're actually practicing for, but it's actually the intensity of what you're doing. Unfortunately, our hands don't care that what we're doing is fun. They just see it as pure mechanical movement. Because last time I checked, my hands haven't got brains. But what they do care about is the load that they're being put under. If you play something really fast and technical for an hour, your hands are probably going to hate you. Because that is so much stress, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment. Having short breaks really matters. Even just having 30 seconds of just shaking your hands in between playing. or just having a nice relax can really ease the tension that your hand will being put under, because it eases that blood flow and gets rid of that tension. And remember, you don't lose progress by just resting for a little bit. You lose progress by getting hurt. So I've been talking a lot about speed, so let's talk more about speed training, because that's where a lot of these damaging factors come into play. When you practice fast passages, your body wants you to tense up. And that's normal when we're pushing ourselves, because practicing something fast with tension teaches your body that when you play something fast, you should always play it when you're tense. This is why we practice in the way that we want to play, just like that Serrano video that I made. Always remember that when you build speed with tension in your hands, it's severely limited. But if you can do it effortlessly, the sky's the limit. And also, it's not just the max speed you can get, it's how fast you can get to that point. That improves so much more. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about sleep and recovery. I know this sounds boring, but stick with me because it really does matter. When you're resting, your body is repairing itself, as you probably know. If you're practicing hard every single day and you're pushing it really hard, but you're getting terrible sleep, as us vampires probably do nowadays, your tissues don't get enough time to recover. All of you gym rats will understand this. There's a process that your muscles can go through, something called rhabdomyolysis, which is the overuse of a muscle causing it to degrade and atrophy. But that's when inflammation builds up. If your body feels weird, something's probably wrong. And you may be dedicated by pushing through it, but it's still a very damaging overload. And having that proper recovery will help massively in the future. Not just in terms of guitar, but in terms of mental health too. We all need sleep as much as we avoid it. Okay, while we're on this, let's talk about soreness and pain, and what the difference is between them. Having mild soreness after a really long session is completely normal. Having sharp pain, not normal at all. Pain that you still have the next day, again, not normal. If you have to change the way you play because of the pain and to compensate for it, then there's something very wrong. Because the thing is, you're stacking more problems on, again, that are going to take more and more time to fix. Because the longer it goes on, the more ingrained it is into your brain. And at that point, the best thing you can do is just stop and rest and relax. I'm not talking for months or weeks or whatever, I'm talking just maybe a day or two. And when you come back, you can address the issue that caused the pain in the first place. Oh, and one last thing before I go. Your body is completely different from everyone else's. And I'm sure you've heard that 100 times before, but it is. Your hand size, your flexibility, your endurance, all of these different things, even including the fibers in your muscles, being fast twitch or slow twitch. Just because one thing works for somebody doesn't necessarily mean it will work for you. Now there are some things that will work for everybody, say, like playing with a lot less pressure. But certain things, like I was saying before about things like your strap height, it's going to change for everyone. Some people might like it a little bit lower, some people might like it a little bit higher. Everyone's different, and you just need to experiment to find what suits you. And just remember, longevity matters so much more than copying someone's technique perfectly. Because if that doesn't work for you, you're much better off doing what you do and having it be a long-term thing, as opposed to trying to conform to someone else. Anyway, that's enough yapping from me. And these videos do take a while to make, and if you can, like and subscribe, because it really helps the channel and it keeps me doing what I love. So anyways, shredders, I'll see you in the next one, so always jump the gun, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.